Guys, coming in for the season premiere of American Crime Season 2, Episode 1. As you guys know, I did watch the first episode of American Crime last year and then just randomly stopped watching. Not because I didn't like the show. I really loved the first episode of Season 1. I thought it was really interesting. It was just, I knew I couldn't stick with it. I had too many shows I was watching, there was too much going on, and I knew I wouldn't be able to stay committed. I just knew, okay, I'm not going to be able to watch this. I'll watch it next season because I knew it was going to be a different crime. So I wasn't really planning on watching this, but when I heard the plot, it really intrigued me. Like, you know what? That sounds so interesting and so different from season one that I just had to check it out. And I have to say that season one to me, I did really like, but it seemed like other shows. Like, I've seen other shows like American Crime before. This season, though, I've never seen a show like the way this was portrayed. This season, without a doubt, I think is going to surpass the first one. I mean, this is an incredible story. I really love this premiere, and just from this premiere in general, I already feel like I'm going to be really hooked on this season for a couple reasons. One, the subject I feel is very important because it's something that's happening all the time. Two, most of what's going on in this storyline is teenagers with kids that are my age, and that's very interesting. Also, it has amazing acting, things like that, but just in general, I really love the way this was done. I loved this first episode overall, but let's just get into it, because there's a lot to talk about, and there was a lot that they did very, very well. And the other thing I like about it is the smallness of it all. You know, the first season we were dealing with this huge crime, there's a bunch of people involved, and yeah, that is kind of the same thing here, but this episode was more of just getting introduced to everyone, getting introduced to everyone's lives before the shit hits the fan, and that's something I really loved. So let's just get into this. And just like the first season, you know, the first episode of last season, we start with a 911 call. We see an anonymous woman is saying she wants to report a rape, and we basically then see what they're talking about. And I like they just cut it off here because in season one, you know, we saw what was going on, but here we have no idea what's going on. It really takes us off guard, and I love that. So we then see in a school a bunch of kids are playing basketball, and simultaneously there's also a cheer practice going on, and everyone has their phones out. You know, we don't know what it's about, but they're looking at their phones, they're looking at a picture that some are laughing at, some are shocked by. You don't know what it's about, and we then get introduced to Taylor Blaine, and I love the way they handle this stuff with Taylor because they give us about 3 minutes of exposition with his character, not too much, but it's enough for us to know how his character is going to be. And there are a lot of things I can relate to with his character, definitely, and I will get into that. He's first seen looking up a teenage male close to his age. We don't know why he's looking at him, but Taylor talks to the guidance counselor, telling her that his semester is going well, and over the break he didn't do anything special, just stay at home and watch TV. I can definitely relate to that a lot. And the guidance counselor asks if he's thought about college, and he says he's thought about how he can't pay for it, and she says the student can help to access many resources, such as a student loan and scholarships. And this is a lot what I'm thinking about because I'm a junior right now, and I kind of have to think about that because, you know, I'm going to be a senior next year. I need to decide, you know, colleges and things like that. So I like that they did talk about this because it is something that I'm going through, and it really was relatable for me. Maybe I just like this because it was relatable, but just in general, I found it very interesting. And she asks if he could do anything, what he'd do, and he says he doesn't know. And she says he really needs to think about this because next year he's going to be a senior, and these things matter. And she asks what he wants to do with himself. We go back to the basketball game, and Taylor gets a text from someone, and he's sending pictures of Taylor. He has no pants on, he's looking drunk, and there's some very questionable texts, but what I love is that we don't know what any of this is about. We're just seeing all this information. I love the way that that was done. And basically, Taylor's with his mom, Anne, who Lily Taylor in this show, I mean, without a doubt, is the scene stealer of this show, okay? There are many actors that are going to be amazing, but in this episode, Lily Taylor definitely, I think, was the scene stealer here. She tells him the school called today about the talk he had with his guidance counselor, and he says he feels like she's pushing him towards Notre Dame, and Anne says she's just trying to get him to think of places like that and just wants to make sure he takes applying seriously. He says he's being real, and they're the ones not being real. He asks if he thinks he can't get in, and she says he should go where he wants, and she asks how Evie is doing, his girlfriend, and he says fine, and she asks if he wants to invite her over Saturday night, and he says no, and he looks very regretful. It's obviously connected to the pictures, but we still don't know what it's about, which, again, I really like. He's clearly hiding the events from Anne. He tells her he never should have gone to that school, and she says Leland's a good school that will help him get into a good college, and she asks if everything's okay with him and Evie, and he says he doesn't want to go back to Leland, and he gets the rest of the laundry, and he's just being very distant. He doesn't want to talk to her about it. And I'd say the kid that played Taylor in this episode nailed the role. Really, he did a fantastic job. And I haven't seen the kid before. He was on Falling Skies, which I'm not too fond of that show, I have to say. I don't think that show, I mean, it's a fine show. I'm not saying it's a bad show or anything. I never really got into it. But the kid who played Taylor, though, absolutely nailed the role. He really portrayed this role perfectly, and we'll get into that when we get more into the acting here. But basically, we see that in Leland, two of the basketball players we get introduced to are these two characters, Eric and Kevin. They're looking at pictures of a girl named Nikki, who Eric wants to have sex with, and Kevin seems a bit more reserved about it. Like, he doesn't seem like he's as, as much as, he wants to have sex, as much as he just finds this girl attractive. And I like the way we get to see how different Eric and Kevin are. And then we see Dan, the coach, witnesses two of the players with two of the cheerleaders, and one of them is dancing for this guy suggestively, and Dan records it. And there's a reason why. At first, I'm like, is he just going to be a perv that, like, records the students? But no, there's a lot more to it, and it's a lot more interesting than I thought, which I really love. So Kevin is with his girlfriend Val and asks her if she's coming over, and she says she has stuff to do, including studying for her test, and he offers to help her out if she comes over, and she agrees. And while he's driving, they run a red light, and an officer asks him if his team is going to win, and Kevin says he should come on by, and he says to tell his mom he said hello. I don't really know what that's about, but that definitely is something interesting. There's definitely something going on there, because when Kevin tells his mom that that officer said hello, she doesn't seem too happy about it. So I definitely feel there's something more going on there. Just it seemed, I don't know. To me at least, it seemed like that's something important. So basically, they get home. Kevin has his mom, Terri, who Regina King, and is awesome to see her back. I find it really funny, actually, that her first line in this show is the same line as her first line in The Leftovers, which is, "Hey, babe." That was the first line she had in The Leftovers, and the same first line she had here. Which, I mean, Regina King is going to be amazing here, and she has some great scenes here, definitely. But like I said, Lily Taylor really is a standout, but Regina King obviously is great. I mean, you put her in anything, she's going to be great, really. It's like, shit, she's gonna be amazing. So Kevin asks his mom Terri if Val can stay for dinner, and she says she's not really making anything, but his dad, Michael, offers to make them something, and Kevin says they're going to go do some homework, and tells Terri, that basically then tells Terri about the cop. Like I said, she doesn't seem happy about it. And before he goes to his room, Michael tells him to leave the door open, and Kevin agrees. He knows he's probably going to try to have sex with her and things like that. And Terri says they spend $20K on that. Maybe, actually, I think he said to keep the door closed. I'm not really sure. So Terri says they spend $20K on that school, and they think Kevin would make better choices. And Michael asks what's wrong with this one, and Terry's convinced that Val is simply just using him. And she says he knows Kevin could do better. And he says he had nothing, he had less than him, and he got her. And she says he got lucky, and he comes home every night and her car's in the driveway. She says before Val started coming around, Kevin could do his homework without the music on. He asked what she wants, because at first she said she'd be happy if he came home with a girl instead of a guy. Then she said a black girl instead of a white girl, and he doesn't see what's wrong. And Terri gives him a suggestion for who Kevin should be with, this girl named Nicole. And I don't know if we're ever going to meet this girl, but definitely seems like something we're going to get at, I think, in later episodes. So Kevin and Val are making out in his room, and it's getting really heated, actually. Like, he definitely is trying to have sex with her, but she doesn't seem into it. He turns the music off, and she says she knows his mom doesn't like her, and he says she's not there for her. She looks at a watch he found, she puts it on, asks if he likes it. He kisses her hand, starts to make out with her again, and once again she tells him to stop. She says she's going to go home, and he says he can drive her home, and she says she'll do Uber, and she leaves and throws the watch. Now, while this does not necessarily seem important, I do feel it might be connecting to something. We'll definitely get into that. So in school, Taylor is in class, and his teacher tells him to grab his stuff and go with Dean Hansen, and this is really when the plot starts to get rolling. What I like about this is that it doesn't take too long for this plot to get rolling, but it wasn't too fast-paced. Like, everything down this episode, I think, was everything we need to see. We didn't see anything we didn't need to see, and that's something I thought was really great. So Hansen calls Anne in and tells her that they need to have a conversation. It's not the kind they can have on the phone. He tells her there's a code of conduct at the school that the students have to follow, and she asks if everything's all right. And he says there's an issue they have to address involving Taylor, and he tells her about the pictures that were outside of the code, and she has to see them. And he says he can't. Taylor has to do that because, just violation of privacy. And Hansen says him and Taylor's counselor, Reed, spoke with him. He was given the opportunity to explain himself. He chose not to, and because of that, they're going to suspend him for 3 weeks, which she is obviously outraged by. She knows there's something else going on, and the look on her face is just awesome. I mean, this is how any mom would react. That's something I love about Anne. There's nothing extraordinary about her except she's just a great mom. And that's something that's great about her. I mean, if my mom were to find out, I think this is pretty much how my mom would react to that sort of situation. That's just personally how I think. And I think that's really relatable for anyone, just the way that Anne acts in this scene. She's being a mama bear. She really is. She's being protective. She wants to know immediately what's going on because, you need to talk to someone about this. I mean, what Taylor went through, clearly there's something he went through that she didn't even know about. And basically, she walks to the office. She tells him he's going to show her the pictures. And when they get home, he's going to explain to her what's going on. But he doesn't even get into the car. He's literally running away from the car. And she definitely knows that something's going on, but she doesn't know what it is right now. So then we get another really interesting plot point. This is something else that I really love. I was worried that Dan was going to just be the coach, that was going to be his character because, Ross had such a big, Timothy Hutton's character last season was one of the main characters, and I wasn't really sure what they were going to do with him here, but he really had some great stuff in this episode. I really like what they did with his character. And the situation going on with his family I found to be just as interesting. He's with his family and shows his daughter Becca the video that he took of her, and she says to stop spying on her, and he says that she's out in public doing that, which Becca feels is simply messing around and part of the routine, and he says she just has to be mindful. So I like that this was his daughter. This wasn't just something he was taking pictures of. No, he's looking out for his daughter, and obviously he's worried that she is, get a reputation as a whore, and he doesn't want that to happen to her. And Becca feels she is simply messing around. She doesn't really think much of it. And Dan asks his wife, Steph, why she would show that to Becca, and she says he showed it to her. And he says he did it so the two of them could have a conversation about it. And if he wanted to humiliate her, he could have done it at school. And Steph says this is what Becca does when she knows she's being watched. And she asks about the routines, and he says he has nothing to do with it. It's all the cheer coach, Pam, that is responsible. And she asks what his deal is, and he says he wouldn't know. And I really like that scene. You see that there's definitely something going on here. It's not as big as a deal, but it definitely shows how different, Becca is from her parents. I thought that's something they did very well in this entire episode, is just show how different teenagers are from their parents and how they don't really see things the way that parents do. They definitely did that very well here. So at the banquet, many of the players, including Kevin, are talking about how Dan keeps them in line and keeps them successful. And very, very important scene here. Definitely one of the most important scenes, especially in this season. And we find out that Michael is Kevin's stepfather, and he didn't have a father at a young age, and Dan was kind of like his father figure, which I thought was interesting. So we then meet the school's headmaster, Leslie Graham, who is played by, of course, Felicity Hoffman, from the first season. And I love that she's a completely different character here. I thought she was incredible in this, definitely just as great as she was in in season one. I mean, I didn't really see her in season one. I heard she was great here, but I think she's going to be even better here. I mean, I really love her character. She talks about how she loves the camaraderie that the team has and how they do anything for each other. And she talks about how blessed she is to have Dan, which is also the same time that she became headmaster. And she says their mission is to make sure they do whatever they can to help their students excel, and talks about some of the efforts they have made. And she says they want to do more and continue to make money for the school, and she toasts to the Knights. So we then meet Evie, and she comes home to her father, and her mother is sick, and she's taking care of her. And when I say sick, I mean like deathly sick. Like I would not be surprised if her mother dies in this season. I would not be surprised if that happens. And she gets a text, tells her mom she's going to go out for a minute, and I thought this was going to be Evie, finding out about the videos and whatnot, but no, she actually meets up with Anne, because Anne, this was very smart of Anne to do. I mean, this is something that definitely, Anne's a very good mom for doing this. She tells Evie that Taylor won't talk to her or tell her anything. He's quiet, cranky, but won't tell her, and she asks if she's seen the pictures, and she asks what he's doing, and Evie says it's all dumb stuff, and Anne asks if she saw the pictures, and she says it got sent around and kids are putting up messages with nasty stuff, and Anne says she doesn't care, she wants to see them, and Evie shows them to her and sees the various insults everyone said about him, and Anne asks if she was with him, and basically Evie tells her exactly what happened. I like that we get her take of the story, or basically get everyone's take of the story in this episode, which I really like. So Evie tells her that there was a party, it was for the basketball team, and it was supposed to be this big deal. Taylor was invited since he never gets invited anywhere, which I can definitely apply to. I don't go to parties. I don't go to those crazy parties. This is why. The situation happens in this episode. That's why I don't go to these kind of parties. That's just why. Because something like that could happen. So he told Evie she could go to, and Anne asked to invite him, and she says it was Kevin. They kind of split. Some he was hanging out with some of the guys on the team and left with girls, and basically left her with girls that were bitches to her, and they insulted her, for not having clothes and for having a cracked phone and things like that, and for not being as rich. And she says one of them finally got Taylor to a car. He just dumped them back there, and Anne asked, when she found Taylor, he was messed up, and all the guys were staying around taking pictures and busting on him. And Anne asked why she didn't call her, and Evie says he didn't want her to feel bad. And she says they both should, and I really love the way that scene went. I mean, Anne now knows what's going on. She knows her son didn't tell her. She's obviously freaking out. And we then see a basketball game taking place, and they win, but Terri isn't sure that it was fair because there was a shot that Kevin didn't take, and she's not sure why he didn't take it. She asked if this was his shot, and he says he shouldn't have just passed it off to someone else, and it was his ball, and he should have taken the shots. And it doesn't seem like a huge deal, but yeah, I mean, he should have done that. I mean, again, it was his shot. He should have done that, and he didn't. So Anne is at home, and Taylor comes in, and she tells him that she talked to Evie and she saw the pictures, and Taylor says to leave it alone. She tells him the pictures are gone forever, and she asks if he knew how hard it was to get him into Leland and how much it takes out of the house, and he gets kicked out for doing something stupid, and she asks what he was doing, and this felt very real. Like, this scene very much felt like a mother and son scene. Like, if I were to hide something from my mom, I mean, I've hid things from my parents before. This is how I've acted, honestly. I will admit that to you guys, that, like, if I were to hide something, this is probably how I would act if something like this were to happen to me and I would not tell my parents. I tell my parents everything, but, like, if I weren't to, this is definitely how I would have reacted, is like how this scene was played out. Very well done here. I definitely really love this. He says he doesn't know what happened. He says he had a couple of beers and the guys on the team told him to be fun, so he wanted them to stop and had a beer, but then everything got messed up, and I like that it was just, him getting influenced. It was all just them telling him, live a little, and he kind of just took it one step too far. And Anne asked where Evie was, and she asked if anyone was helping him while he was down there, and he says he knows he wasn't lying and didn't tell her because he was ashamed, like someone did something to him. And Anne hugs him, tells him it's all good, and obviously that did something to him. That's a big part of where the rest of the episode goes. So we then see that there's someone in a ballet class with another student, and Leslie watches them as the teacher tells them to just let it flow, and it kind of, honestly, that's kind of like what I want on Flesh and Bone. I mean, Flesh and Bone wasn't much of a ballet series. This gave us more ballet than Flesh and Bone ever did. So Leslie's then told by the dean that Anne wants to talk to her, and Leslie says she knows about Taylor's situation and the pictures posted online, but Hanson says she thinks there might be more to it, and she says that Taylor was sexually assaulted. That's kind of what she thinks is going on, because Taylor says that someone did something to him, and she thinks that it was sexual, that he was sexually assaulted. And Leslie, and basically she wants Leslie to tell what she might be believed happened, and she tells them about what happened with Taylor, and Leslie asks what Taylor made to make her believe someone hurt her son. And I love what she says here, that she says she just knows. It's not what he said, it's how he feels, and that just goes to the mother's instinct. That she says he doesn't fit in, it's not financial aid. And Leslie asks if she knows anything about his behavior that evening he came home, and she says she wasn't home, she was working. And Leslie goes over what she's claiming, and Anne agrees to all of it. Leslie says they're going to look into this immediately, but until they can determine and support what happened, they need to keep things confidential for everyone's sake. And Anne agrees. She gives her a paper so they know they met with her, and Leslie thanks her for coming to them. She asks her if she's okay getting home, and she nods, and when they leave, she cries. Obviously, she breaks down, and Leslie then tells Dan about the situation and something, about how something happened with one of his players and that he needs to talk to them. And he's not really sure if this is, the right thing for him to do, if he should do it. But I like what Leslie says, that, they see him as this leader. They see him as the person to, as the camaraderie and the person that's going to lead them to victory. So if he's going to do it, it'd be better than if she were to do, because it wouldn't really feel like they were in trouble. And I like what she says, that they don't really know if this is real or not, and they want to get more details. I love the way this scene was played out. Very good stuff there. And Dan does that exactly. He tells them to bring it in. He says one of the things they talk about is how they represent on the court, on and off, and everything they do is about each other. the school, students, faculty, everyone. And it's all about respecting how others view them. And he talks about the captain's party, and he says they need to talk about that. And right away, we cut to afterward with Steph. And I like that we didn't see that because we've already heard this story. We don't need to hear it again. So Steph asked him afterward if it got messy, and he says he has to be the one to start rooting around and look for rats. And he's got guys looking at him like he was accusing them. And he doesn't want to be the one to do that. He doesn't want to be the one to have to accuse them. He wants to be their friend. He doesn't want to have to be disciplinary because that's not how he does things. And I like that he isn't upset because of the situation. He's upset that he has to step in, and it's not because of the fact that he has to step in and get involved. It's just he doesn't want to have to punish them. He doesn't want to have to be the one to put them down. He wants to be the one to get them to victory because that's what he's done all along. That's what he wants to continue doing. And that definitely makes a lot of sense as to why he wants to do that. I can definitely understand why he wanted that. Definitely makes sense to me. So they go into this great scene where Steph talks about if they should talk to Becca because she's a cheerleader and there were some there and she doesn't want her at those parties. And for all we know, Becca could have seen what happened to Taylor. I mean, we don't know. Becca could have easily seen. And he asks if they're going to lock her in her room. And she says she absolutely misses being her age and how Becca's very much like her. And she feels she's getting old. And she says it's weird to think people their age used to be getting ready to die. You turn 50 and then you got 5 God years and then you die. And she says they're not that old yet, and he asks what she wants to do about Becca, and he says it's a mom-daughter talk, but she thinks it's more of a sex talk, but I like what he says, that it's more of a trust talk, and he doesn't want her to think she can't come to them with her stuff. And he asks her if she's falling asleep, and she says she's sorry. He puts a blanket on her and kisses her goodnight, and then we get this amazing scene between Leslie and Ann that ends the episode. For me, highlight of the episode was this final scene. Without a doubt, this was the highlight of the episode for me. I mean, just the way the scene was played out, everything here was perfect. Leslie asks Anne how Taylor's doing, and Anne says he's alright but not coping. And Leslie says she would hope during this time he stays engaged, and she says if he needs help with schoolwork to please know that, to please know that they're going to help him. And Anne basically asks what they're going to do about what happened. She doesn't want to hear all this bullshit about school. She wants to know about the students. That's what she wants. She says they look into the situation and they're individuals who will be disciplined. And she asks how, and she says that it's private, and Anne says they don't care about her son's privacy. Now, what I love about this is that Leslie and Anne are both right here. I mean, Leslie is doing what you should do. You should keep the information confidential because you don't want to get that person in trouble. And you don't want everyone to know because, social media, things like that. I definitely understand that. What Leslie's saying, that they don't want to accuse someone of doing something before they actually know what actually happened. Because for all Anne knows, her son might not have been raped. I mean, she thinks he might have been, but he hasn't actually said that he was raped. I think I know more of what's going on than Anne does. I think there's a lot more going on than we think there is. And Leslie says she needs to be careful with that because Anne's saying that it was raped, and Anne says if someone messed him up and touched him, that was rape. And Leslie says she doesn't know the full details, needs to be very careful. Anne says he was drugged, his girlfriend was there, and she saw him, and she says he came in and made a statement, and 6 times she uses the phrase, I don't know, and I'm not sure. So that's why they're not sure if it's true, because, there were so many times she said, I don't know. So she says, that Taylor didn't volunteer to come forward, and she's making a statement only after the picture was surfaced. And Anne says she came in because she knew, and she says they've taken disciplinary actions, and she asks what they're going to do to the boys. And this scene was just so great. Honestly, it was incredible. Very much felt like, just give Lily Taylor an Emmy, honestly. After the scene, you need to give her an Emmy. Leslie says the suspension given to her son was fair and correct, and she says to take the time to be with Taylor and engage with him and make better choices and to think about the other boys. She says, as bad as it may seem, it can get work, and she offers counseling, and Anne bursts out of the room. She doesn't want to hear it. She wants action to be taken, and she does something that I definitely feel she's going to regret because Anne is the one that calls 911, and that's how the episode ends. So overall, guys, I loved the shit out of this premiere. I loved last year's, but this, in my opinion, was so much stronger because the situation we're dealing with here. Not many people can relate to a home invasion. You just can. That's what we were dealing with. We were dealing with a home invasion / murder case, and I thought what was going on here was just a lot more relatable in the sense of, what we're dealing with. And me personally, I feel there's definitely a lot more going on. Personally, I think that something happened with Taylor, and that Taylor is the one that is responsible for a lot of this, and that he's just not speaking up because he doesn't want his mom to think he did something bad and disappointed her. And, the reason that Anne thinks that her son was raped is because this is her son. She doesn't want to think of him as a bad person, and she wants to think of her son as a victim rather than the person instigating what happened, the situation. She doesn't want to think of him that way. But I think that's kind of what happened. I definitely feel that's very possible. That's what might have happened. That her son might have actually done something, and he doesn't want to admit it. I kind of feel like that's what's going on here. Now let's talk about the two characters you're introduced to in this episode, Kevin and Eric, because they're two very important characters. Kevin, we know, is very aggressive with Val, wants to have sex with her. She clearly doesn't. She's not into the idea. And then Eric is talking about having sex with a girl that he doesn't even know just because he saw some pictures of her. So these two, they definitely are writing them as they very well could be victims, and they very well could be the ones that victimized Taylor, and they could have maybe raped him. But why would they? There's a lot of red herrings here, and that's something I really like. There's something like they did very well here is that they didn't really say, oh, we know for sure it's not this. We don't really know what happened. We don't really know if, what Evie said is the truth. She's just portraying Taylor in the way that she sees him. But like I said, I feel there's more to it. And let me just credit every single person this cast is on their A game, and it's great that they gave Lily Taylor more to do because she did not have a main role last year, but thank God she does this year because damn is she incredible as Anne. She is going to kill it. I love her character, and I think she's going to be amazing. They've also given Regina King more to do, which I can't wait to see what happens with her. She's going to be great. What is going on with her and this cop? There definitely is something going on there. I don't know what it is, but it just seems like there's something going on there. I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with Dan's storyline. Timothy Hutton is going to be great. Felicity Huffman in this show, though, oh my god, as Leslie is going to be incredible. I can't wait to see where they go, what they do with her character, because I love that she simply is just trying to do what's best for the school. She doesn't want to make things worse, and I like that she told Anne that you're gonna make things worse. And yeah, things are definitely gonna get worse after what Anne did, especially if she doesn't know the full situation. I'm gonna say right now, Anne is going to regret that 911 call. No matter what happens, Anne, I would not be surprised if Anne's like, why did I make this call? Why did I make this call? That's gonna happen, definitely. We don't know too much about Eric yet, where I think we're definitely gonna find out more about his character because he is a main character. But the entire cast here is great. The only character we were introduced to was the principal of the public school that Taylor did used to go to. So we weren't introduced to him yet, but we are getting introduced to him, so I'm looking forward to him. I also really like Hope Davis as Dan's wife. I think she's really great. I really like her character. Overall, guys, every single actor in the show is great. They're all doing a great job. But what I'm most impressed by here is the script here. The script here is just so great. It's so realistic, and it just feels like this is based on a true story. It really does. I mean, it feels like this is something that happened, and they're writing it as realistic as possible. And that's really what makes American Crime so good. It's so raw. It's not afraid to get dark and, really sad and really hard to watch, and they did that very well. And I like that we didn't see the actual situation play out. That way we can say, okay, we know for sure that's what happened. It keeps us watching, and I love that. And I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how this season's going to go. I'm definitely, I think, even more into it than I was last season. This is going to be a great season. I definitely know that. But let me know what you guys saw this premiere. I know this doesn't premiere till 15 minutes, actually, is when this is about to come on, 15 minutes from now. But overall, guys, let me know what you guys saw this premiere. You have seen it. I was so impressed by this premiere. I loved every minute of it. Really, I did. I thought it was great. There were so many amazing scenes in this episode. And I will see you guys in my next video, which will be for episode 3 of the Shannara Chronicles already. But like I said, episodes 3 and 4 are online right now. I'm going to take advantage of that and watch them. So I will see you guys for that. Okay, bye.